I'm Lin-Manuel Miranda, and you're listening to Hard Knock Life.
Well, it's the NOC in full color, you see me? The Hard Knock Life, comics, movies, and TV, yeah. Pop culture with a
Welcome to Hard Knock Life. I am Keith Chow.
I'm Britney Monet.
Hi, I'm Dominic Ma.
The gang is all here. Hey, everybody.
What's up?
Feels like it's been a minute.
Yeah, I had to take a little time to process like the Fantastic Four getting decimated. That was a big deal for me, but I'm good now.
Well, we never got a chance to talk to you about the multiverse and the madness within. What is your take on the most recent entry into the Marvel Cinematic Universe?
Oh, I always thought it was fun, and I thought it was cool to see all the Raimi style come back. And I mean, I thought it was kind of goofy, but like in a highly enjoyable way. And then I thought it was very fan servicey in the middle, but also in a way that appealed to me, with all those characters being revealed all at once.
And then unrevealed, as it were.
Yeah. But that was great because, I mean, I don't know if you guys talked about this. Like, there's a trope in comics where like all the good guys get basically slaughtered in some alternate future or alternate reality, and I think the X-Men like really started doing this, and they did a little bit in that movie Days of Future Past, where there's a certain there's this gladiatorial thrill of seeing all these heroes get really wiped out by a tremendous big bad, but no, it's okay because it's in the multiverse, or no, it's okay because it's alternate future, so we get to anyway. I thought that was a distinguishing point of that movie.
Yeah, we talked about it for a good amount. Brittany, have your opinions on that movie changed at all in the last couple of weeks?
No, and I'm actually seeing it again because my family still hasn't seen it yet. So after this, that's what I'm gonna go do.
And I feel like I still need to see the Everything All at Once movie. I still have not seen it.
You got
I'm
it.
Such a bad Asian, right? Like, it's the most important Asian American movie in like theaters at the moment, and I'm like, I was able to check out the Doctor Strange movie, but I still have not managed to see the Michelle Yeoh movie. And it's funny that there's a drive-in near my house that's doing a double feature of Multiverse of Madness and Everything All at Once. So I thought that's kind of neat.
Perfect.
The only thing about like drive-ins is that they start really late because it's you have to wait for the sun to fall. And I really we thought about going, and it was like, oh, it won't start until 10, and we won't get home till like 3. I'm too old for that shit. So I will eventually get around to seeing Everything All at Once. Everything Everywhere All at Once. But in the meantime, we'll just have to put a pause on that. But yeah, there is a lot to talk about other than catching up on a 2-week-old movie. There was some news. We were off last week. I shared a rerun of a Shelf Conscious episode since it's been a year since my toy podcast. So thank you for indulging me. Listeners out there who are like, I don't want to listen to this bullshit. I want to listen to Dominic and Britney chat. Here we are. Got a lot to talk about. The death of the CW, for one. I know, Brittany, last week you were off because you were doing your own podcast with Brother Nate and the DC TV podcast family. And then you were doing a live podcast of Naomi.
Yeah, we were.
And it was right on the heels of the news of Naomi's cancellation and the cancellation of half of the CW's primetime lineup. My condolences. This is like the second show that you're covering that gets canceled back to back. I don't know what's next on the feed. We don't want the feed to go away, but how are you guys processing the cancellation from Naomi? And then what is your opinion overall on, like, we touched on it a little bit a couple weeks ago, like this new direction of the CW and what should happen with all of their remaining DC shows?
Yeah, it sucks because it's like, again, another show, like you said, because I was doing Black Lightning, and a lot of people thought they knew going into the season 4 that it was being canceled, but no, they had already written like a whole different story arc for the show, and then in midway through filming season 4 is when they found out they were being canceled, and then they had to rework a lot of stuff. So Black Lightning, at least they got to end on a note where like they kind of got to course correct a little bit. But with Naomi, I feel like they wrap up the season 1 story very well with its end, but it kind of has this, like, I don't know, it's more like a post-credit scene, even though it's not a post-credit scene. Like, that leaves you like, well, now I'm not gonna know what's gonna happen. But I don't know. I feel like the CW does this all the time. They cancel shows because one of my other shows that I used to watch when I was little called Popular. I don't know if you remember that, Keith.
I remember Popular.
Okay, so for those who don't know, Popular is, I don't remember if it only went one season or two seasons, but the last episode that ever aired, one of the main characters got hit by a car at the end. And so it was left on a cliffhanger where you don't know if that person, died or not. So I'm just like, a CW has done this to me again.
Oh.
It's a little frustrating and upsetting, but I saw it coming, unfortunately, with Naomi, because I think I said it before, at least I don't know if on air, but I've said it before that like it was such a divergent from the like actual comics that I felt like because of that, it didn't hold enough of the actual like comic readers. So then when you have such a new character that has like very small like branding, it's like not everyone's going to flock to this show. So I feel like they kind of unfortunately did it to themselves. I hate to say it.
Yeah. And I know it's getting kind of pulled into all of like the cancellation of the Arrowverse discourse, but it wasn't ever really established as an Arrowverse show, right? Like there was
not yet,
like hinting that maybe in the future they'll pull in the Arrowverse, but it was pretty standalone the entire season, right?
Yeah, it was pretty standalone, and like I do think that deviating from the comics is really what like messed. I feel like bringing in a bigger audience, but then again, I mean, no one thought Riverdale was going to get canceled, and they just announced that Riverdale is canceled. So
what? People love Riverdale.
They're getting at least one more season, though. They're getting one more season.
Yeah, but I mean, I didn't think that show was going to be canceled anytime soon. Still, so I think that it's just safe to say that a lot of shows, unfortunately, right now are being just canceled at the CW.
But what's interesting too is that like on the heels of all the cancellations, they did also announce their new lineup for the fall, and they greenlit a Gotham Knights show, which is set in the Arrowverse. It was supposed to be set in the Gotham City of Batwoman, even though they canceled Batwoman. And of course, there's a new season of Stargirl and a new season of The Flash, which everyone is assuming is going to be the last season of The Flash. So
okay. And there's still Superman and Lois, right?
And there's still Superman and Lois, which is, again, kind of like, even though Tyler Hoechlin and Bitsy Tulloch like came from the Arrowverse, and I think perhaps John Diggle was on one episode, it does feel, again, separate and apart from the Arrowverse.
Yeah.
And here, this is the 10-year anniversary of the Arrowverse. Like, do you feel like it's kind of like outlived its usefulness? I mean, they've canceled essentially all of the shows in the Arrowverse that mean anything, and The Flash is going after next year. Like, I mean, is it safe to say this is the end of the Arrowverse?
I agree. I think it is. It was fun while it lasted. I would say, because of the Arrowverse, I kind of made connections with people that I probably wouldn't have made, but still, it's unfortunately, I feel like it was kind of time just because I feel like a lot of people started losing interest, unfortunately, in the shows, especially when HBO Max has, like Titans and Doom Patrol and Peacemaker, and then you have all the Marvel Disney Plus shows. So I feel like there's better superhero content in other places. Even The Boys on Amazon Prime, So I feel like that's the problem too, is that there's other places doing better superhero TV.
I mean, and for what it's worth, the CW, not just for the last 10 years of the Arrowverse, but for the last 20 years, if you count Smallville, was the only place for superhero content. And to your point, now that there's HBO Max, now that there's Disney Plus, now that there's all of these other outlets for superhero shows, the specialness, as it were, of the CW is not as important.
The novelty is worn off a little bit about seeing the superhero show on a real network. Well, now every real network has every cable network has a superhero show, at least one, and network shows themselves are like, they can't even keep track of the shows that are on like on the original 3 or 4 networks. Like, right. I don't know what an NBC primetime show is anymore.
What is broadcast at this point?
It is New Amsterdam, right?
and also, like, if you think of the Disney Plus shows and the HBO Max shows and even the Amazon shows, the Netflix shows, they also have budgets. And I think one of the things that the CW for the last several years in particular has kind of like the seams started showing, right? Like if you compare the effects and the sets of early season Arrow, early seasons Flash to the last couple seasons, it's like night and day. And these are effects heavy shows. These are like expensive shows to do. And, you know, and you stretch your budget so ever so thin when you have so many. Like, the Arrowverse was like 6 shows deep for a while, right? Some of those budget constraints started to show, I think. And I think if you compare it to like a Peacemaker or a Moon Knight, where they look like extensions of film franchises.
Yeah, for sure.
CW wasn't never going to be able to compete with that.
Agreed.
So speaking of the shows on Disney Plus, we're in the little lull, right? We're going to have Obi-Wan next week. Ms. Marvel's on deck. The other thing that's on deck, and I definitely wanted to get both of your reactions to this, is that Disney Plus has greenlit either season 4 of Daredevil or season 1 of a completely different Daredevil show. So let me just get your take. Like, what do you think this Daredevil show on Disney Plus is going to be?
First of all, I thought you were going to talk about the other Disney Plus thing, and I was like, oh, people are about to hate me. But
there's a lot of Disney Plus things we can talk about. So
not that part yet, but
for Daredevil, it's like I'm excited that we're getting Matt Murdock again, played by Charlie Cox. I'm very much looking forward to that. But I kind of think they should have had maybe the writers from Hawkeye take it over, because I think the people are doing it. I looked at their existing film stuff, and I'm just like, I don't know if they're the right people to head this project. And I just hope that Disney doesn't decide to lessen I guess the darkness and brutality of what the Netflix shows were.
Yeah,
I'm like, why would you take all those shows over and up the settings, or you have parental controls and then not
give it a PG-13?
Yeah, and then make it PG-13. It makes no sense. So I just hope it ends up being really well and fun, but at least I know that Matt's going to be fun to watch on Echo. So I'm not worried about him on Echo. I'm more worried about him on his own show, because I don't know what's gonna what the writers are going to bring.
Yeah, I don't know the pedigree of the people they got to write the new Daredevil either, but yeah, I mean, Daredevil, the Netflix series, is one of those things that I think is so perfectly executed, and a question of whether they would. I mean, season 3 did leave a bunch of wonderful cliffhangers, mainly what was going to happen to Bullseye, and the origin story of Bullseye in that season is one of the most viscerally scary things that Marvel Netflix ever did. That shit was real. So yeah, but I'm excited to see any new Daredevil, because Daredevil's one of my favorites. But yeah, the question if they're going to try to bridge that Netflix incarnation after many years with an older Charlie Cox, it's an interesting problem.
Because we've talked about in the past when they integrated Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio into the MCU, not necessarily those versions of the characters. There's been chatter for the last few months about, is D'Onofrio playing the Kingpin from Daredevil? And, this is a conversation that's only relevant to nerds, right? Because at the end of the day, all of these, continuity questions and stuff, the general audience doesn't care. The general audience that just thinks Batman 7 is the same Batman, having to say this Batman is separate from that Batman. People ultimately don't give a shit, right? Mm-hmm. It's only us nerds who care about the deep continuity and stuff, the multiverse or whatever. I
would just add to that Daredevil was really well artistically executed.
Sure,
it's one of those that I can stand by just as, wow, that was what a cinematic version of the superhero series should be, and I would want them to continue that strain of excellence.
I mean, I guess what I'm saying is that, but right now, both Kingpin and Daredevil exist in a space in which you can interpret their TV show as part of the universe or not, right? It was it's whole Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. thing where, you can pretend that it's in the universe even if it's not technically. You know what I'm saying? There is no contradiction between the first 3 seasons of Daredevil and the movie universe, aside from not acknowledging the blip. But whatever. Other than that, the blip erased 5 years of everyone's lives. It could have existed at any point in the Marvel universe. But what I'm saying is that by announcing a new Daredevil show, because backing up for a second, Constantine I felt was like that on the CW, talking about the CW. They by hiring Matt Ryan to play Constantine on Legends of Tomorrow, it kind of you could pretend that his NBC show was the backstory of the character that you saw. There was nothing that contradicted. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? But if you do, my point of is this season 4 of Daredevil? or is this a whole new Daredevil with like a different Foggy, a different everything else? To Brittany's point, why would you do that if you brought on the original show? I guess to me, it's like a little bit confusing to like do a Daredevil series.
Are you talking yourself into they might just do a full reboot? I'm sorry.
Well, yeah.
I mean,
I don't know that's what I'm saying. Like, what are they? Because I thought, honestly, by having Charlie Cox in the MCU, they would try making Daredevil a movie again. Again, where would you put the series in Disney Plus? Would you put it in the Daredevil like tile? But if it's not connected to the first 3 seasons of Daredevil, is that confusing? If it's a PG version of Daredevil, is it like going to be accessible if it's in the Daredevil, if it's Daredevil season 4? So, I mean, it's all these kinds of like, again, dumb questions that I don't think anyone else gives a shit about. But for me, I was like, this seems complicated. Maybe it's not.
No, there's nothing stopping them from doing a full reboot. I just hope they do not.
Well, all we know is Vincent D'Onofrio has been told to treat his Kingpin as the same Kingpin. So unless something has changed since he's said that, like, I'm assuming that it's also the same, Matt. But, I guess we won't officially know until we actually see at least a trailer for the show. I'm hoping it's good. And I kind of figured that it was coming just because Mike Coulter and Kristen Ritter were hanging out and they took a selfie and she like smeared out a badge or something she had on. And I was like, oh, I'm like, that's very interesting that they're both like hanging out and she had to smear out this badge. Like it looked like a pass, like to get to in between places. So I'm like, I'm pretty sure they're filming something. And then like 2 days later, it was the announcement that Daredevil a new season was happening. So like, yeah, they're bringing back all the Defenders, I think.
So the other Marvel show that was announced, it wasn't announced. I mean, it's been announced, but we got our first look at Echo.
Oh, I didn't see any of the Echo news. Go ahead.
Well, it was just a still from shooting, and they just started shooting. There's no announcement of when it's coming out. And there's the cast announcement. One of the cool things is like it's almost entirely an indigenous cast, which is cool. There was no announcement of Vincent D'Onofrio in the cast, which is interesting, or Charlie Cox. And it looks like it's taking place in Echo's origin story because her father, unless there's like flashbacks, because her father is coming back for the series too. But are we excited for the Echo show, especially after her star turn in Hawkeye? I
definitely am. So far, I'm pretty much like on board for almost everything. But yeah, Echo seems fun. I liked her on Hawkeye. Like I said, Hawkeye ended up being in my top 3, which was not something I expected going into this. So I don't know. I feel like her show might be fun. Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, Echo's one of those characters I'm not that familiar with. So I'd be happy if she did break away from Kingpin and Daredevil and all that stuff, which I was necessary to introduce her to the universe. But I like the idea of like, especially for focusing on the indigenous cast element, to let it really be its own standalone story. So that seems good.
Ms. Marvel had a new featurette come out recently. It was cute because they showed Iman Vellani's, like when she was told she was cast, it was like a Zoom video. Did you see that? It was really cute.
Yeah, it was very cute.
I've seen that before. I think that was one of the very first things they
really? I just saw it for the first time.
Because it's so precious and it's like every kid actor's dream.
Yeah. So they dug into recent featurettes. They've dug into the whole power set controversy. And I know Swar is not here. He's probably the most ardent defender of the embiggening power. But both Sana Amanat and G. Willow Wilson have spoken out in, I guess, defense of the light powers or the cosmic powers. As someone who is, I guess, pro inhuman embiggening, is that a fair?
All the true fans are pro inhuman embiggening. This is how much of a hill we want to die on.
Well, yeah. Well, what do you think of the official MCU defense of why her powers have to be cosmic? I think Kevin Feige, to paraphrase, said something along the lines of like, her power set came at a specific point in the comics history and that the MCU history is different. I think what he's essentially saying without saying is that there ain't no Inhumans in the MCU. Like, we've given you one acknowledgement by casting Anson Mount to get his head blown off. But other than that, we are not touching Terrigen Mist. We are not touching Inhumans anymore. Sorry, Daisy Johnson. But I think that's what he's implying.
That's fine. The Inhumans can be erased for better for worse from
Yeah.
the big. No one's missing that too much, but that's separate from the power set question because she could get those powers from a variety of sources. But I mean, this is one of those things where, like, yes, I'm pro her classic power set with the polymorphic hand embiggening and all that says about growing up as a young person and having like body issues and stuff. But on the other hand, I don't want to like fight about it in the way that we lose sight of the prize, which is still a cool story featuring a young person who is Pakistani American. And they get to investigate all the sorts of things that we haven't really seen in Marvel Universe before. Even as simple as the thing with her bracelets. You know, her bracelets have a family history in her comic story, and we can, if we can emphasize those more and get away from the, inhuman cosmology, that's actually a good thing because that's like a real world story about partition and like the history of the area. That's my thoughts on it. But it is weird because we did get the stretchy powers and multiverse. So we're kind of teased like that.
I think that a lot of people have been saying, which I think is starting to be true, is that they want only Reed Richards to have the stretchy powers. I feel like that's what it is, honestly.
Well, and I think the other thing they're trying to like make her connection to Carol
more obvious.
Power more obvious because again, like Captain Marvel's history in the movies is very different from the comics. And a big part of the original Ms. Marvel story is that one, she takes the name Ms. Marvel because that was Carol's name. But Carol was never Ms. Marvel, right? And I think they just want to kind of show the cosmic trio of Carol, Monica, and Kamala, perhaps. I don't know. I mean, this is all speculation until the show comes out. I'm less precious about the embiggening stuff. I mean, they're still fainting towards it, right? They're still going to be like big fists, and it's just going to be made out of like this cosmic energy rather than her actual body. So, I mean, as long as they get the spirit. My thing about any comic adaptation for years, again, I'm someone who's used to die on Smallville hills all the time, is like, as long as they get the essence of the characters, even if it's not exactly a reproduction of I think one thing comics fans have been spoiled watching adaptations over the last few years is that we've gotten like actual splash pages on the screen that when it's not exactly a carbon copy of the comics, we're kind of disappointed. But like Smallville was a perfect example. It's like we never got like actual Superman content on screen, but we always got the essence of the Superman characters. So that's kind of how I totally get people who are pining for her power set to be closer to the comics, but
also, again, it's not locked in. People develop new powers. Miles Morales took like several months to figure out all the different powers he had. Like he came up with a new one like every other week. It's like, oh, now I have to deal with this. So I just in the interest of us not being closed-minded, I don't want us to lock into, oh, this is in the trailer. This is the way the character is set in stone.
Yeah, I agree.
I still think it could be a big reveal as she grows into having any kind of powers. Maybe that's one that develops. I mean, she does it in comics too. She's always like using her polymorphic skills for like a new thing that she hadn't thought of before. And that's one of the cool things about her character. She's kind of MacGyvering her own set of tricks. Is that right, Kamala? I don't mean to speak.
For those of you listening, Kamala action figure just made her debut on the Hard Knock Life podcast.
Yeah, with big fist, which is
and it wasn't me. Usually, I'm the one who pulls the toys.
I love
out.
my action figures too, Keith. I just unbox them and aren't careful with them.
All mine are unboxed. I don't have anything in boxes back here. What do you? I mean, they're behind glass doors.
They're behind glass.
You have one in a
special
box.
case
I can't tell
for
what
them.
it is. I told you. You either die a hero, you live long enough to become the villain in Toy Story 2.
Whoa.
Last Disney Plus Marvel thing I want to talk about before we take a break is we got a trailer for She-Hulk. And we got a lot of discourse about said trailer. I'm assuming, Brittany, this is the show that you're not psyched about?
Too?
Yeah. I'm very disappointed because, and it's not to say anything against Tatiana, because I know she's a fantastic actress. And I think a lot of people are hearing the conversation and thinking that people don't think Tatiana's talented. And that's not the issue. She's very talented. We know she can act her ass off. Like, we know that. There's no doubt about that.
But I think the problem is about her ass. Is that
yes, literally.
What is the beef? I don't know.
Well, there's a lot of beef from a lot of different angles, but
I would love to know all the various beefs.
So I think that this was the time when Marvel could have done something different and cast an actress with the different body type that we normally don't see. Because a lot of people don't realize that camera still adds 10 to 15 pounds to like actors. So if you see an actor who you think they're like, oh my God, they're so buff, they're actually probably really tiny in person still. It's like everyone freaking out about Tessa Thompson, Natalie Portman. Like, sure, they bulked up for what would be bulky for them, but in person, if you saw them, like they would be 10 to like 15 pounds, maybe even 20 pounds, depending on what kind of camera they're using in person. So they're not as bulky and buff as everyone is one ranting and raving about. I'm sorry to burst your bubbles. This isn't to say they're not in good shape. Like, I want to make that clear. They're definitely in good shape, but I think that this was a time to actually cast an actress who was actually, muscular and thick and like, closer to Serena Williams's body type, and they had the opportunity to, I think, do that and they didn't. And then even like the CGI of She-Hulk looks too thin, and there's people are trying to pull like sensational She-Hulk covers, and it's like even in those covers you still see more muscular definition, and that she is a little bit thicker than what we see in this CGI rendering, and it's just upsetting because it's like you want different. Yes, we want also body representation as well as race representation, and this was a great opportunity to do something different, and yet they didn't. And it's kind of like the same thing when you see Hollywood, like, again, Colin Farrell was really great in the Batman, but they could have cast the actual actor that Colin Farrell looks like.
Or Richard Kind. Like,
Yeah.
I think someone showed a photo of Richard Kind, and he could have been. He's basically, they spent all this time making up Colin Farrell look like Richard Kind. That's one angle. Another, from a different side of the, I guess, political spectrum, is people are claiming it's too woke because I guess it centers a woman and it doesn't, it's not designed to titillate men.
Dumb. Well, that's dumb.
And I think the other, like, or that, like, anytime that they feel threatened because it's like the trailer at least is clearly like, kind of like a romantic comedy. It's focusing on her like dating, and they're like, I just certain dudes on the internet feel a certain type of way about a Marvel show focusing on a woman's, bodily autonomy, I guess. I don't know.
Well, those two issues converged because that was always an issue with She-Hulk. I mean, even back to the comics, like she was like old school She-Hulk is drawn in a sort of, exaggerated version of a feminine ideal, like an Amazonian kind of thing. She was not big and monstrous like the Hulk, right? Later on in the comics, they changed it to be like that she was like more a monster version of woman, and that was a cool adaptation. But I mean, the old school version was both like a woman's story, but also perhaps designed to titillate men in a way because she was this exaggerated green babe. So I think that's interesting.
But I think people think that I mean like I want to see her like Hulk, and that's not what I mean. I think that people don't realize how much more she's still, even the version you're talking about, she still has more muscle and thickness and curves than the She-Hulk that we have in this trailer, and that's the problem. She's still too tiny. Like,
oh yeah, I mean, she's definitely thicker in the comics always. I get that.
Even the like smaller when she first appeared, like she's always been a lot more thicker and curvier and muscular, and this version of her is she's just really tall and green. Like, that's it. Like, it's not there. I'm like, where's her muscles? There's like, it's not there to me, and it doesn't look like that She-Hulk. She looks too tiny.
Okay, well, I'm not okay. I don't quite have as much beef with that issue because I don't think that's how super strength works. Like, I don't think it's like your body type is an indicator of how like super strong you are.
But I think to Brittany's point though, like body representation, like, it's not too much of a stretch to imagine the Hulk version of Mark Ruffalo, and it's acceptable. And then, like, that's not realistic either, but it's not offensive to anyone that Hulk is this massive dude. But why can't there be a massive and even like Jamil's character, she like there's a flash of her.
That's a problem. She is like she's still kind of like smaller, but she's still thicker and like curvier than Tatiana. She's playing the bad guy. Like that would message are you?
And it doesn't look like that they do any CGI. I mean, I don't know if she's hulked up in the flash we see her in the trailer, but she looks like herself. She doesn't look like enhanced CGI. You know what I mean? And I think that's what you're saying too. Is like, why can't they cast
thicker than Tatiana, which is the like Tatiana's supposed to be She-Hulk. She-Hulk should be thick, and I'm not saying like Mark Ruffalo Hulk thick. I'm just saying she should be thicker. And then you have the actress who's playing the villain who has a thicker body type, and she's the villain. And then like it sends a lot of weird, like people probably are thinking, oh, you're thinking too much about it. But I mean, every time there's roles where, you know, curvier or more muscular, or even women who are already tall could be cast in the roles, they still give it to a petite actress. And then those actresses who are like, you know, bigger and stuff, they're like, oh, well, you know, maybe when there's finally a role for you, you can like audition for that. And then when there's a role that they could play, they don't get that role, or they don't even have the opportunity to be in that room because they're still trying to look for someone who's small. And that's the problem. It's not so much like, oh yeah, let's just have her look like, you know, Mark Ruffalo. Like that's not the issue. It's just, you know, this is another opportunity to cast a different body type in a role, and they didn't do it.
I totally understand all these beefs about the body type and the representation thing. That's lower on my, you know, radar personally. I'm very excited about the see the She-Hulk series because of the sort of what you mentioned before, the way it portrays, you know, a woman who's a professional and like has a sex life, which was part of the She-Hulk thing.
Well, yeah, the complaint about it's too like it's too funny and it's too like, you know, not heroic or whatever. Like that's such a stupid, like one, that's the most comic accurate about about that trailer of anything else, like especially the Dan Slott comics of recent vintage, right? Like she's this fourth wall breaking, irreverent kind of character. Like it makes sense that the trailer kind of reflects that. I don't know. I guess there's some dudes who just wanted like savage She-Hulker, I guess. I don't know. But like the fact that it like focuses so much on dating and like Tinder and stuff like that I felt like was pulled straight out of the comics.
That too. That I'm fine with like that aspect of it. I don't have an issue with making her, you know, having like a little rom-com thing. Like again, that's not my issue. Like I said, my issue is that there was a chance to actually cast an actress of a different body type, and they didn't do it. And, you know, that's why we have this circle of like, you know, oh, well, there's, you know, only fat people or only muscular people can audition for this. And then when there's roles that they can easily fit, it's like, no, let's go and cast, you know, Tom Holland and whoever else is not that Spider-Man is meant to be tiny. But like, you know what I mean? What I'm saying is just like anytime there's an opportunity to actually cast like a certain people of a body type, they're like, yeah, let's cast, you know, like that recent thing they're doing with Monica Lewinsky. They're putting someone in a fat suit when they could have hired an actress who's actually like plus size to play Monica Lewinsky. Like, you know, it's things like that. It's like,
yeah, it's a pattern for sure.
It's kind of the same thing with like, oh, if this role is meant for a black person, but then you just let's give it to a white person. It's, you know, still in that same realm of like, okay, you could have done better with, you know.
But also like the fact that the hulked out version of She-Hulk is all CGI, and they still made the choice to make the CGI version also not as muscular and as bulky as she could have been. Well, and you know, that's one of the many faults of the CGI so far too. Like
it's bad.
I'm surprised that they actually showed so much of her, considering she looks pretty unfinished. Were you surprised by the amount of actual She-Hulk that we got? And I did also read that, you know, perhaps we were a little bit more harsh on a CGI, you know, fictional woman's face than like a man's face, because a woman's face is meant, you know, again, the kind of like beauty standards that she's not supposed to have any wrinkles or
I do think we're getting into a slightly weird era here, because there's a lot of CGI that creates this and that's their
well, that's people. What I'm saying. Like, so like the uncanny valley on Tatiana Maslany's face is more apparent because it has to be perfect because she's a woman, whereas like, you know, Abomination and Hulk can have all of the like imperfections because again, we don't expect a man's face to be quote unquote perfect. Is that there's the reason that she's so uncanny is the double standard in like beauty standards for men and women, and that's why the CG looks worse on her.
Well, and also they were monsters. The Hulk and Abomination type are monsters, and She-Hulk was conceived not to be a monster, for better or for worse. But what's interesting about the series that is, I think that she might engage engage that arc? Like, what is it like Hulk has always been like a really good metaphor for just, the rage monster that everyone has inside of us. We go, and everyone can relate that. But I mean, like, I think, if I may say, like, I think a women's rage has a different sort of feeling, a different sort of pathway that it could take. Can I say one more thing about She-Hulk and Ms. Marvel? I'm sorry. I think it's an interesting pairing of these two shows that are going to come out because they're both women focused, and one, like, another thing about Ms. Marvel, I think we should be really prepared for it to be really kid stuff. I mean, I don't know if we talked about this all, but it got like the most family friendly rating, right? And for all our concerns about it, I think it might be the one that is just really oriented towards kids, and we should all be prepared for that.
As it should be, though. Like,
as it should be.
The R-rated Ms. Marvel would be so stupid, right? Like, the dark and gritty Ms. Marvel show is something that I don't think anybody's asking for.
Right. But I think just as a contrast, it's interesting that She-Hulk was like a very adult story, of very like dating and workplace shit. So that, to me, that's an interesting juxtaposition.
Yeah, I like, again, I don't have an issue with like the plot of She-Hulk, and I know that she doesn't. To me, I don't really care for her looking like a monster either. It's just like, again, she just should have been thicker to me. That's it. But again, I think Tatiana's great, so I'm not worried about in terms of her portrayal of the character. Like, I think she's going to be fine. I just think that it was a perfect opportunity to look at, actresses who are taller and curvier, or at least curvier, and, they just kind of missed, to me, that mark. So, I don't know. They could have also done, people complain like, oh, she's 7 feet tall. Well, I mean, they did the tricks on the hobbits, to make them look like they were really short when they weren't. There's camera tricks, and you could use green paint if, like, the CGI looks this bad, too. It's not...
Like, there are tall women. Like,
yes.
The WNBA exists, right? Like, it's not far-fetched to cast a...
Yeah.
So I guess what you're saying is that rather than, and this could have avoided the whole CG problem, they could have gone the Lou Ferrigno route.
I mean, that's right.
Well,
I think we're past that
I'm being
era.
serious. Like, is that? I
Yeah,
is that
because
a
I mean,
route they could have gone?
but look at Gamora. Her makeup looks fine. So if you could find an actress who is, taller than one, like most of the actresses that are in the MCU are like 5'7" or shorter, and really they're petite, or it's like, a slim build, or like slim athletic build. So like, to cast an actress who's probably like at least 5'9" or taller, and who's more on the curvier, thicker side, would have saved them where they don't have to do as much CGI rendering, and they could have, did the camera tricks that make people look taller. Like, they obviously...
I mean, again, Jamila does not look CGI'd, and she looks like she's in her hulked out version in the trailer. So they decided to do that with her.
Because she's playing the villain. I feel like it is because she's playing the villain, and for the villain, they're like, oh yeah, we can go with someone who's thicker and curvier.
A little curvier.
Yeah.
And it also happens to be a woman of color. Just like, it's okay.
Yeah. So it might not have been sometimes casting directors and things, they don't think about those things, but like, for people who do think about representation and body representation, like, that's something that they're going to notice and be like, it's very interesting that they cast the really tiny one to play, because She-Hulk's supposed to be, I think, even bigger than the villain, technically. So it's just kind of like, it's just weird. That's the only reason why I'm not excited for the show, is just because of that. But I know, like I said, in terms of story-wise, and I know acting-wise, it's going to be a good show. It's just disappointing to, like, we had another opportunity to cast somebody different and they missed it. So that's my only, like, grievance with it.
Well, with that, we'll take a break, and after the break, I want to dig into the next Disney Plus show and this massive Vanity Fair cover story about the future of Star Wars. So we're going to come back on the other side and talk about Obi-Wan Kenobi. Guess what? Goalie Nutrition is sponsoring Hard Knock Life, and you can go to goalie.com to buy apple cider vinegar gummies, their ashwagandha gummies, superfruit gummies, and super greens gummies. And you get 10% off plus free shipping if you use the code HARDKNOCK at goalie.com. This is honestly, I've been taking the goalie gummies now for a couple weeks, and I have to say, they're tasty and they're good for you. Have you guys been enjoying the goalie gummies?
I really like them. They're yummy, but it's a nice to add to my routine of already, I normally take just straight vitamin C, so it's nice to have extra supplements.
For a long time, people have praise the benefits of apple cider vinegar. And, you know, as someone who's had to like drink straight apple cider vinegar sometimes when I'm not feeling well, or, you know, I have some joint pain and your mom is like, drink some apple cider vinegar. It's not the most appetizing home remedy, let's just say.
No,
Right.
it tastes horrible.
Like the apple cider part is like, ooh, does it taste like apple cider? And it's like, no, it tastes like vinegar. But ACV is very good for you. And the fact that Goli has been able to put the ACV into these tasty little gummies made with pectin and fruit peels, which make them vegan, which is cool. So if you're vegan, you can still rock these gummies, because everyone knows gummies are usually made out of like gelatin and nasty shit. These are made out of complete non-GMO, gelatin-free, gluten-free, vegan ingredients, and you can get the benefits, all of the benefits of apple cider vinegar, taking these tasty, delicious, convenient gummies. So go to Goli.com and use the code HARDKNOCK, that's HARDNOC, just like the podcast you're listening to. Get 10% off your purchase of Goli products and free shipping.
It's a much better delivery device for that apple cider vinegar.
Yeah.
These Goli gummies are great. You get
I
it, and it's
agree
a
100.
delicious little candy. And I've been enjoying the Superfruits one. I did feel kind of refreshed after taking a few of those.
Yeah, no, but I'm loving them so far, and they're definitely tasty. If you just want tasty gummies, at least just eat them for the yumminess.
Yeah. So go to Goli.com, use the code HARDKNOCK, HARDNOC, get 10% off your purchase and free shipping at Goli.com with the code HARDKNOCK. Hard Knock Life is being sponsored by Athletic Greens. I want to talk to you about Athletic Greens. With one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging. Basically all the things. One of the best things about Athletic Greens is that it's lifestyle friendly, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free. It also contains less than 1 gram of sugar and no GMOs, no nasty chemicals or artificial anything, and it still tastes good. Athletic Greens uses the best of the best products based on the latest science with constant product iterations and third-party testing. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just 1 scoop in a cup of water every day, that's it. No need for a million different pills or supplements to look out for your health. And to make it easy, Athletic Greens is partnering with Hard Knock Media to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/emerging. That's athleticgreens.com/emerging to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. So we are just a few days out from the first 2 episodes of Obi-Wan Kenobi. There's this massive story in Vanity Fair. I'm sure you guys at least glanced through some of it. I know I sent Britney the super high-res version of Hayden wielding his lightsaber. Mm-hmm. That sounded dirty.
Only to you guys. Only your mind goes there.
One, what are you anticipating, and what are your plans for this Friday?
Well, obviously, watching Kenobi. I'm really excited. I've been pushing for the show ever. I was already on board, but then when they said that Hayden was coming back, I was just like, oh, I'm so excited. And then the Vanity Fair photo shoot was showing everyone, and we also got to look at Diego Luna.
So we got some Cassian Andor news as well.
So I was really I love this photo shoot. It's great, and I really love the shot of Reva and Darth Vader, where their lightsabers crossing. Oh my god, it's so beautiful. I'm just really excited for the show, and I can't wait. And your interview with Deborah was so cool.
Yeah, good job.
We'll talk about that. But one thing I did want to point out on the cover story, the actual cover of Vanity Fair, it's Pedro Pascal, Rosario Dawson, Diego Luna, and Obi-Wan Kenobi. What's his name? Ewan McGregor on the cover, in character, of course. Mm-hmm. And Edgardo Miranda Rodriguez, the creator of La Bordequeña, pointed out on Twitter that of the cover of the actual magazine, 3 out of the 4 characters are played by Latin actors. So that's kind of cool too. The future of Star Wars is in the hands of these Latinx actors.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes, I did get a chance. Speaking of, the racial makeup of the Star Wars universe, had history played out a little differently, it would have been 4 people of color on that cover, because I think we've discussed in the past, one of the greatest what ifs in American cinema history is what if Toshiro Mifune had said yes when George Lucas approached him in 1976 and said, would you play Obi-Wan Kenobi? Because had Toshiro Mifune been Obi-Wan Kenobi in 1977, it would have been an Asian actor in 1999 playing a young Obi-Wan Kenobi. Mm-hmm. And that said young actor would be now a middle-aged actor playing Obi-Wan Kenobi in the TV series in 2022. So I did get a chance to just have Deborah Chow ponder that question. I didn't get a chance to ask her who she would have cast in 1999 to play the Toshiro Mifune version of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Mm-hmm. But I will get a chance to ask you guys to put your thinking caps on and think about that point in the grand multiverse in which George Lucas is looking for a young actor to play a young version of Toshiro Mifune in The Phantom Menace. Who would you have cast in 1999 to be young Obi-Wan? I gave away who my ideal person
you
would
said
have been.
Takeshi Kinshiro, right?
Yeah.
Which is a good idea at the time. Again, maybe a little dated because I don't know. Maybe he's like a old guy now. But
well, he's the same age as Ewan. So he would have been the same age as Ewan in 1999.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, and that's a great idea. I would have said someone like Tadanobu Asano.
Who played in Thor, the
who, among other things, was Hogan the Grim in Thor.
Hogan, yes,
killed by Hela, but his a wonderful, he was sort of, I shouldn't say this now. He was considered like a Japanese Johnny Depp for a while, and that's a weird comparison.
When it was a compliment, now it's a little
that
weird.
was a compliment meaning of like a versatile, like interesting actor. But anyway, but he's a cool actor, and he's been in his share of swordplay battles like in Saito Ichi, but he also has that deeply reassuring internal life like Ewan McGregor has. So
no, that's an awesome idea too. I mean, just the general idea of having an Asian Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I think George Lucas even like further said, had Mifune been Obi-Wan Kenobi, then he would have cast a Japanese Princess Leia and a black Han. So, which is cool. Well, okay. But it's also like, why does like one person of color say no means now everyone has to be white? Like, that's kind of weird too, George. Like, I couldn't get to Toshiro Mifune, now everybody has to be white.
Yeah.
But had he not said no, I would have cast all these people of color. Like, okay, maybe you're like pulling our leg a little bit, George.
He had like, I don't know, certain actors already in mind for those roles. If he had said yes, and like he was hoping those actors would say yes because he like
right
he had said yes. So I feel like maybe those were like the people like were deadlocked into that if they had all like said yes. So
yeah,
because I don't know if that was like his way of thinking, and then didn't want to audition anybody else.
Right.
I wonder, like, was Billy D his Han Solo? Like, he eventually cast him as Orlando. Like, who would his Black Han Solo have been? I
don't know. I feel like I don't know. The only like actors that I know for sure that are Japanese off the top of my head is like Ken Watanabe, and I'm just like, I don't know if he would have been.
I think again in the 90s, that's the thing. It's hard to like think about now, because if we were to like name even just outside of Japanese actors, Asian actors today, we have to kind of rewind the clock 30. That's why for me, Takeshi Kinshiro made sense because he was actually a big deal in the 90s, coming off of all those Wong Kar-wai movies. And, again, he's a similar age to what Ewan was in 1999. He still acts. So, I mean, it's not like he's also not around anymore.
Keith, again, in this specific thought experiment, any Asian can play any Asian, because that would have been the time period.
Right.
They would not have been like, oh, it's got to be a Japanese guy, because we didn't look at that with the same laser focus.
Yeah.
We were, in fact, casting around for anybody Asian who's male on TV at all in 1999.
That's what I was trying to get Deborah to respond to, is that what would that have meant? Because, like, again, Obi-Wan Kenobi is one of the most iconic characters in not just like cinema history. Alec Guinness was nominated for an Oscar for his role in Star Wars. Like, just the thought of Toshiro Mifune, one of the greatest actors of all time, playing Obi-Wan Kenobi, little kids our age growing up with an Asian wizard character, like on the little Asian action figures and all that. Like, it was just like what it meant for Asian representation in Hollywood. I feel like, who knows? Maybe it wouldn't have meant anything, but maybe it would have meant everything. The revolution that came in 2018 might have come 30, 40 years earlier. Maybe Toshiro Mifune means we don't get Long Duck Dong. You know what I'm saying? Like, Who knows? Who knows what butterfly effect?
Yeah. Would have been endured all these movies in the 80s, yeah. But
what if Bruce Lee didn't die in 1973?
I know, and that's where these
right?
thought experiments get a little sad to me.
Yeah.
But
yeah. So anyway, but that's the point in the multiverse that I was trying to talk about, and if you want to check it out on YouTube, go to our YouTube channel and see my interview with Deborah. But beyond that, Deborah was the one who fought for, and this came out in the Vanity Fair article. Fought for the inclusion of Hayden Christensen. Like the earlier version of this show, there was no Darth Vader. In fact, I don't know if you remember, we might have even talked about it on the podcast like 2 years ago or so, when after it was announced, there was all these scripts being written, and they essentially just start over, you know? And a lot of people at the time were worried, like, is this show even happening? But the reason they started over is that they wanted to include Darth Vader. Deborah actually went to Hayden's house and was like, please come back as Darth Vader, and now we have him. And have you noticed, I don't know if it's just me, but like, have you seen any of the recent interviews with Hayden? His voice sounds like really deep. And he's like, he just doesn't sound like the Anakin from like 2002. That was like
almost 20 years ago. Even my youngest brother, he was like, Hayden Christensen looks old. And I was like, excuse you. He's only like 8 years older than me, or less than 8 years older than me. I don't know. Yeah, I know. He's grown up, and I'm really excited that he is back. I've always thought he was great, and not just because I thought he was cute. I think George Lucas purposely wrote Anakin to be a sad and misguided teenage boy. And I feel like some people forget that their teenage boys can be dramatic and all over the place. And so I feel like a lot of people were just unfairly harsh to Hayden. And I feel like in general, the Star Wars fan was unfairly harsh to a lot of people that they don't need to be. Like, I'm not a huge fan of that Alden kid as, Han, but I'm not out here like, oh, he's ruined my whole entire life and he doesn't deserve to act anymore. Just like, it just didn't work. His Han didn't work for me, and that's okay if it works for other people. But like, I don't know. I just don't understand the need to like overly like attack.
But that seems like, I mean, that's the light in the dark of being Star Wars fans, right? Because like, for some reason, I think more so than any other fandom, Star Wars fans have a very toxic relationship with these actors. I mean, because it's not just Hayden. It was Jake Lloyd. It was Ahmed Best. It was Kelly Marie Tran. It's like a lot of actors who've kind of gone through the Star Wars ringer have come out on the other side. Like, I'm glad I'm not part of that machine anymore, because it almost killed me. Like, Ahmed Best talked about his depression and suicidal tendencies after being like raked over the coals for playing Jar Jar Binks,
Yeah, and there's still people who try to like mess with him to this day to it, and I'm just like, leave it alone. Okay, you don't like Jar Jar, whatever, but like, Ahmed doesn't deserve that type of like treatment. And you know what? I hope he gets to play a live action character where he's not in the Jar Jar prosthetics, because he deserves it. I don't know. I feel like a lot of the actors who have been like treated terribly, even Alden, even though I'm not a fan of his Han, he deserves another chance or something, because I'm just tired of like this.
But why is it? I mean, is it just me? Like, I feel like it's like Star Wars fans are unique in that, because there are like a bunch of fandoms, and there are castings people don't agree with necessarily. But I don't feel like it's as toxic. Like, for all the shit Robert Pattinson gets as Batman, like the history of Batman casting is that those fans come around. They're like shitty until the movie comes out. Michael Keaton, Heath Ledger, like, we're shitty, and then the movie comes out, and then we're like, oh, they were actually really good. Like, no one ever gives that grace to Star Wars actors. Even in this one, Obi-Wan Kenobi, like, the guy playing the Grand Inquisitor just is getting shit on constantly because he doesn't look like the cartoon,
I feel like some of the bad discourse is because it flattens out, because Star Wars had a wider reach. I mean, I think we're looking at a whole lot of people, a big sample size, and some of those people are just assholes. Yeah, as opposed to comic book fans, I just think that was a smaller niche, so that we can sort of self-regulate a little bit. But whenever something new Star Wars comes out, you're looking at fans of different backgrounds, and some of those backgrounds are just being assholes. Because Star Wars is a big deal. That's what I'm saying. Star Wars reached many people, so a small percentage of them are just going to be jerks. We're not necessarily in the same tribe.
Right.
I just feel like it's because I feel like Doctor Who has a pretty huge fandom too. And yes, there are toxic Doctor Who fans. Don't get me wrong.
I mean, they've come out in droves in just the last few weeks.
Yeah,
so.
there's
yes. But it's, to me, I still feel like it's not the same level as Star Wars. It's just, like you said, I feel like because Star Wars has such a bigger reach, they have a bigger fandom. But a lot of them are very toxic and racist, and that's the problem. When like this whole series is about like, you know, hope and love, and that people of different, like, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same people who are like, you know, I hate Star Trek because it got woke. I'm like, Star Trek been woke since 1962. I don't know where you've been, dude. Like, or you know, whenever the original, it's 1965, 1966, something like that. I don't remember. Raymond, my brother, will correct me because he's the Trekkie in the family. But, you know, but like Star Trek has never not been political. You know what I mean? Like Roddenberry's whole vision of the future is this like, you know, liberal utopia. And I don't know, just like the conservative or like, you know, the right wing Star Trek fan just like trips me out. Like, why do you like this then? Like, it's the same people who like listen to Rage Against the Machine, but also like get offended by Rage Against the Machine's politics. It's like, do you listen to the lyrics, bro? Like,
Right.
Eddie Vedder wrote pro-choice on his arm 30 years ago, and like the people going to the concerts today are like, you know, get politics out in my music. It's like, come on, man.
Like, I feel like the one genre that has always been very political and anti-establishment is punk and rock in general. Like, they've been very, like, you know, anti-establishment and, you know, fuck the man and all that shit. So it's just like, where did you, like, miss that? Where have you been? Like, and I think because it circles back to certain people think you can separate. I mean, you can in some ways and you can't in some ways, to separate the art from the artist and all that stuff. But it's like when their beliefs are part of their art, that's kind of hard to, like, separate it.
I mean, circling back to Star Wars, but like the inclusion of Hayden Christensen is not woke or political at all. Can I just say it's just honoring the original thing? Sure. People hate on that even too. He has his fans like Britney. He has his detractors. There are a lot of them.
Like Dominic.
I was like, you're gonna say, I'm like, now you're saying they don't like Hayden?
I'm kind of exactly in the middle on Hayden. I don't.
I'm
there's not hate. There's not hate in my heart for that. There's not like great affection.
I'm driving to San Francisco
to see Hayden Christensen.
No.
To beat me up? I don't even understand.
Maybe.
I see.
Just because I don't love the guy and crush on him.
Believe that's slightly toxic behavior there.
Fairly indifferent to him.
Well, but here's the thing too. Like the folks who, like Dominic and I, who grew up on the original trilogy, I think we're unfair to the prequel trilogy because there was a whole generation of people.
You can't say that because I saw those movies when I was like 3.
Right.
The original ones. My dad had me watch them. So at least
no,
for me,
but to you, like Star Wars is the prequels, right? Like that's you came of age in the era of the prequels.
I mean, I was excited for them because I had already like seen, like, you know, I was in love with Han Solo before I had saw Phantom Menace. So I don't know. I was just excited to see.
But what I'm saying is that you know you didn't have to hate the original to like the prequels because it went the other way. People who grew up on the originals, I think, unfairly hated the prequels. And a lot of, I'm not saying you're one of these people, but like a lot of people who grew up on the prequels hate the sequels, like hate the sequel trilogy. You know what I mean? And I think that's, again, this is just like the weird discourse of Star Wars fandom is like, why do you even have to hate any of it? You know what I'm saying? Like at the end of the day, I think I've matured, I guess, or I've grown in my fandom enough to like, I don't hate any of it. Like to your point, I don't agree with a lot of these things. I don't necessarily love some of the choices in these movies, but I don't like have the space in my heart to actively hate it. You know what I'm saying? Even Jar Jar, even like a lot of the choices in maybe Rise of Skywalker is still.
No, you can still hate Rise of Skywalker. It's great to elevate your mind and open up your heart all the way up to Rise of Skywalker.
Because Rise of Skywalker was cynical. I feel like Rise of Skywalker was a cynical version of Star Wars. It was like, hey, toxic fans, this is what you wanted. Boom, here. And that's kind of, I think that's what I don't like about Rise of Skywalker. You could have done anything than to like, you know, cater to like a certain type of fan, which I think Rise of Skywalker
I
does.
didn't like is that it had so much potential, and it just makes me sad because I'm just like, I don't know, just bring back Ben Solo. He should not be dead. Like, I still think giving Rey the whole like she takes the name Skywalker and making that reason why it's called Rise of Skywalker really just dumb. I'm sorry, it's just
Cheesy.
dumb.
Yeah.
And better done in the other script, but whatever.
Yeah.
That is also what that's out of the bag.
Reserve any hate in my heart for that movie, but everything else, from Jar Jar to Attack of the Clones, all that stuff, like I think it's fine, and I'm happy for people who are kind of reclaiming the prequel, and I think what the project of Obi-Wan Kenobi is doing that. It's kind of like putting a stake in the prequels and saying, you know what, we're not going to like just say that these were shit movies and acquiesce to certain fan base, because like there's a whole generation of fans who love these movies.
I mean, I'm gonna be honest, I'm not a huge fan of Phantom Menace, but as a whole, I really like Darth Maul. I thought he was cool. I just like the bad guys. That's my thing.
Yeah, I think I've controversially stated that of the prequels, I'd like Phantom Menace the most. Because I feel like Phantom Menace feels most like a movie, and it's the one that's probably had the most like. Because I would have loved to talk to Hayden and Ewan actually about this, because Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, like, they both feel like movies shot on green screen, And I think they've talked about in interviews like how difficult it was to make those movies, because
as they were, yeah.
Compared to especially now shooting in the volume with the LED screens, it's like you can actually see something in front of you. Whereas before it was like Ewan said in an interview, like, I'm walking around talking to this 9-foot alien and I just have to pretend everything in my mind, and it's just hard to get in character. And I feel like that comes through, at least with the Phantom Menace. It's not my favorite movie, but I think it's the one to me feels most like a movie because they're actually interacting with things that are there.
I don't know.
So
I like Revenge of the Sith best of those because it gets savage and sort of heart-wrenching at the end, really.
Yes, I love the tragic story.
But that's just me. But can I ask something about Kenobi that I'm not too clear about myself? Like, are we pretty sure that there's going to be like an Obi-Wan and Darth Vader in full armor lightsaber duel? Which, to my mind, we haven't really ever seen, in the category of fan service set pieces that they could gift the old and young fans with. I've never seen Obi-Wan fight young spry Darth Vader in his full armor state. I mean, we had the duel in Revenge of the Sith, and we had the classic duel in the very first Star Wars, which was kind of two guys standing around with lightsabers. It wasn't that, wasn't that exciting. It always seemed like something that needed correcting.
I don't know that there will be an actual lightsaber duel. I mean, I think if they didn't, though, it would like piss people off if they don't. I don't know that there will be, but
I think they gotta have one, don't they? Would it violate something if they don't?
I think they will, because I think that they're gonna kind of do it in a way where it works, because remember in A New Hope when he's like, I haven't heard that name and so many, and like he kind of says, and I thought there was hope to like save him, and I feel like Obi is somehow gonna still have hope whenever he finally goes up against.
Well, but I think Obi-Wan will, until like what this series will do is show why Obi-Wan has lost faith in Darth Vader.
Yes, and I feel like they're gonna have to have a fight. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's true. Now that you put it that way, I think that's true. Because in A New Hope, Obi-Wan does not believe Vader is worth saving. He's more machine now than man. Yeah. But there is a scene. I actually I couldn't think of the scene, and so I kind of stumbled over my words. So I cut it out in my interview with Deborah. But there's a scene in Return of the Jedi where Vader tells Luke, Obi-Wan once felt the way you did. And if you think back, like, when did Obi-Wan ever think that Darth Vader was savable? Because like when he slices his limbs off in Revenge of the Sith, he doesn't feel like he's savable, right? He was like, you were supposed to save us, right? Like,
that's not like reaching out to a friend and give him another chance. Right.
Here, take my hand. Like, never happened. But I think there will be a point here where they confront each other, and he says, you can still become a good person. And Vader says, fuck you.
Out comes the lightsaber, and they fight it out.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah, I think that's it. That will call back to Return of the Jedi when Darth Vader tells Luke, Obi-Wan once felt the way you did. Which has been like kind of like confusing for the last 40 years, honestly, because it's like, when did Obi-Wan ever give a shit about Darth Vader? Before we end, I did, since we're talking about Revenge of the Sith, if I could correct one thing about that movie, I would have had Anakin lose his lightsaber before he slaughters all of the children, and then basically forge his Darth Vader lightsaber to be the evil children murdering lightsaber, so that it's less awkward when Luke is wielding the murder weapon of all of these children in the original trilogy. It's like,
that's nerdy, but cool.
I get what you're saying, but I feel like that lightsaber still had hope, because he still had hope until he
that's what I'm saying, which would have been fine had he not used it to murder all of the younglings.
No, but I still think even though he did that, there was still I still feel like, again, Kenobi keeps giving Anakin so many chances is because he still felt like before they battled that there was probably still hope to pull him away from what he just did.
But isn't there in Attack of the Clones, isn't there a whole bit that they're I thought they were setting up about Anakin always losing his lightsaber? There's several times in Attack of the Clones where Anakin and he's like, "This is a very important weapon, never lose it." And Anakin's like, "Whatever, Dad." And so that's what you could have again, since we're talking about Star Wars multiverses, I want to be in the multiverse where Anakin lost his lightsaber and Obi-Wan finds it and holds on to it. And then by the time they confront each other again, he's got a red lightsaber. He's got the Darth Vader lightsaber. And that's what they're fighting on Mustafar. And it's a very minor, nerdy nitpick.
Oh, dude, that's an easy mod. What some fan has put that. You can make that lightsaber red.
I'm just saying, so that then the weapon that carries so much weight in the original trilogy and in the sequel trilogy will not be dripping in the blood of young Jedis, is what I'm saying.
Does feel a little tainted.
Anyway, with that, happy birthday, Brittany.
Yeah, thank you.
Was your birthday? Okay.
This week.
Well, it's
because
Wednesday, the 25th. Yeah.
It was supposed to be Obi-Wan Day.
That's why
that was supposed to be your birthday present.
I have to say my opinions on Star Wars are always going to be more valid than anyone else's because I was born May 25th. So,
there you go.
Joking, but...
I mean, it's fine. I was born in 1977, though, so I'm just saying, I feel like I carry a little bit of... I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
I was born on actual Tatooine, okay, guys? I just hadn't told you till now. But...
So I finally finished reading The Fallen Star, which is, the High Republic books of Star Wars, and it really made me sad. I cried. Spoiler alert for anyone who's planning on reading those books. I'm sorry, but Stellan Gios does not make it. He dies. And I feel like Stellan, and the reason why I feel like it's perfect to talk about this is because Stellan, and I tweet about this, Stellan and Obi-Wan would really have gotten along, because I think those two represent the best of actually what the Jedi are supposed to be, and everyone else is kind of I don't know if you should be a Jedi. And so, yeah, Stellan and Obi-Wan really would have gotten along, and Stellan basically sacrificed himself so everyone else can live, and it was very sad. And yeah, it was a really good book, though. So highly recommend reading all the High Republic stuff if you haven't yet.
Will do. With that, Brittany Monet, how can people find you on the internet?
So you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Hi Brittany Monet, which I've actually been tweeting about the new State Champs album, which is a good album to check out if anyone else wants more music recommendations. If you like pop punk, the new album's called Kings of the New Age. But you can also check out Naomi Podcast, even though it's kind of done, but we might do when they release the full paperback of the book season 2 of Naomi, because I don't know why the books are called seasons, but yeah. So when season 2 of the comic book of Naomi comes out, we'll probably do us going through those, but that's probably pretty much it. Other than that, it's kind of
featuring the feed TBD, right?
Yeah, so it'll probably still for sure have the Lituation Room feed, which is everyone who's on the Black Lightning podcast, which was me, Brother Nate, Clement Bryan, and Vanessa Shark, who Vanessa Shark has expressed interest being on this show. So
the more the merrier.
You guys might meet her eventually at some point. So yeah, you can check out the back feed of all that pretty much. That's pretty much it right now.
Dominic Ma?
Oh, I'm Dominic Ma on Twitter and Instagram at Dama, DOMMAH.
I am Keith Chow. You can follow me on Twitter at @TheRealChow, _real_Chow, and on Instagram at RealKeithChow. Follow the Nerds of Color at the Nerds of Color, and go to hardknockmedia.com to find this and all the podcasts in the Hard Knock family. Give us a rating and a review if you do. Also check us out on YouTube at youtube.com/the Nerds of Color, and on Patreon, support us at patreon.com/the Nerds of Color. And until next time,
Hayden Christensen lives.
Was that a question? I thought he was still with us.
I just think he's awesome. He's here forever in my heart.